In April of 2021, a few months before we were scheduled to get married, I started noticing that things were different in our relationship.
It's almost impossible to come across a discussion about self-improvement without someone suggesting you heal from something.
The more that you heal,
You can heal your own brain.
Healing yourself emotionally.
This is part one of healing after being cheated on.
Healing era.
if you're in your healing era,
And it has helped me tremendously on my healing journey.
Don't get me wrong, healing is an important part of self-improvement, especially when it comes to healing from past traumas or certain wounds from our past.
It was really, really hurtful and traumatizing to find out that information 3 months before you're about to get married.
But no amount of healing will prevent you from getting hurt again,
My fiance had cheated on me.
from falling victim to the exact thing or person or situation that hurt you in the first place.
I said to him, I know everything.
Really think about it. If someone cheats on you, lies to you, manipulates you, abuses you, why is your first instinct to fix yourself?
I'm tired of carrying so much shame around this.
To think that there's something wrong with you?
I had a choice to make.
That's not growth.
Was I going to marry him and move forward?
That's conditioning.
God has restored our relationship.
And that's what keeps you stuck. Because as soon as that narcissistic ex or that toxic friend comes back into your life, that wound that you healed from is going to reopen. And it's just going to bleed you dry.
Praise Jesus for restoration and for healing. I wouldn't be where I am without God.
You might not think you're superstitious. Heck, you might not even think you're a little stitious.
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
But most women are operating based on a very dumb superstition that if I heal enough, I won't get hurt anymore. And let me define a superstition for you. A superstition is a belief or practice resulting from a false conception of causation. And this superstitious belief, this emphasis on healing, is how we stay oblivious to the unfairness of the world. Because this excessive focus on healing that we're seeing frames external abuse as a reflection of internal incompleteness. You think that you are the problem. And don't get me wrong, healing, going to therapy, unpacking your childhood, working through traumatic experiences, all those things are important and they're great, and I'm not knocking that in any way. However, when you think you're the problem and you get hurt and you turn around and ask yourself, what did I do? What's wrong with me? You end up wasting so much of your time focusing on the wrong thing. You think you're broken, when in reality, there's only one type of person who's truly broken, and I'm going to talk about that soon. And here's a reality check for you. I'll give it to you straight and I'll give it to you gay, because most of your friends are probably not even giving it to you straight. People don't treat you better based on how healed you are. They treat you based on what you'll tolerate. And you were taught to tolerate a lot of things that you shouldn't. Also, hello, greetings and salutations to all the bad bitches who are tuning in. I am your host, Nikki. I am the baddest bitch in the building, not to be confused with you, who's also the baddest bitch in the building. And this is the only show out there about how to unlearn our internalized patriarchy while navigating this system in a way that's actually going to benefit us. Because we are not victimellas out here trying to win the suffering Olympics, okay? I don't get mad, I get my way. And one of the ways to get our way is to understand that this disproportionate focus on healing is counterproductive. And again, I am not knocking therapy or anything that can actually help us work through past experiences and traumas. I think everyone would benefit from going to therapy. I'm talking about the fact that when most of us come out of a situation that hurt us, we think to ourselves, okay, I need to heal from this. I need to heal from this. But let me tell you something. If I was dicing an onion and I cut my finger because I wasn't dicing the onion properly, obviously I'm going to go and put some polysporin on it. I'm going to wash my hands. Actually, flip the order. I'm going to put a Band-Aid on and I'm going to let my finger heal. But if I don't change the way I dice the onion, next time I do it, I'll just end up cutting my finger again. So the healing didn't prevent me from getting hurt. Now, put a pin in that analogy because I'm going to come back to it later in this episode. But think about this first. When someone treats you poorly, you might not realize it, but you've been taught to ask, what's wrong with me? Rather than, how have I been lied to about every part of my being as a woman? Why have I been taught to be nice at the expense of my dignity? To bite my tongue, even if it means tolerating disrespect or even abuse? Why have I been indoctrinated into self-blame? And when you finally ask yourself these questions, and this might be the first time these questions have come up for you, you'll realize that as women, we've been groomed to tolerate disrespect. And I'm not saying this in a way of acting like a victim. This is how the system works, and this is why I'm here to help us unlearn this crap and get into better habits. Because I don't believe in acting like victimella and getting upset at everything and spiraling into a victim mindset. But I'm going to tell you how it is. We've been groomed to tolerate disrespect. And the problem is when we become aware of this disrespect, like you found out you got cheated on or that the person you're dating is a narcissist, when you become aware of that disrespect, your tendency is to turn inward and to think you're broken, that you need to heal. And that's the superstition at work, that if I just heal enough, I won't get hurt anymore. And this superstition is literally like a blindfold that's been placed over our eyes. So we become completely oblivious to the true thing that's harming us. And with that blindfold over our eyes, we also don't realize who's actually broken. Because it's not us, it's not you. So if healing isn't the answer, then what is? And if we're not the ones who are broken, then who is? So much of what we do is driven by superstition. And I've identified 6 different superstitions that the patriarchy has indoctrinated into women. And the one that I just mentioned, that if I heal enough, I won't get hurt anymore, that's one of those 6 superstitions. And these are the guiding principles of my book, How to Hack the Patriarchy, because in order to truly navigate the patriarchy in a way that enables us to unlearn our internalized patriarchy and also grab the system by its balls and exploit its loopholes, we need to identify these 6 superstitions and we need to unlearn them. Okay, you might think you're not superstitious. You might think you're a little stitious, but that doesn't matter. If you're guided by these beliefs, then you are giving a false causation power. And that false causation is essentially a minion of the patriarchy living in your head. And these superstitions, specifically, if I heal enough, I won't get hurt anymore. These put power into black magic. Because we end up measuring our worth by the validation we receive from others. We ignore our intuition by giving the benefit of the doubt, and we think we need permission to exist. And these are all forms of black magic. And no one told us to do these things. No one told us to ignore our intuition or to ask people for permission to feel our truth and to feel like what we feel is valid. No one told us to do that. But that's our internalized patriarchy at work. And these superstitions are guiding that internalized patriarchy. They're like a compass for it. Now, I'm not saying to pull the straight man special and to fully dodge accountability, because in most situations, even when we get hurt, there's still some part that we played. I'm not victim blaming or saying it's our fault, but in most situations, there's a role that we play in there. So I'm not saying to completely dodge accountability and say we have no part in anything. And a good example of this is Ron and Sam's relationship in Jersey Shore. As you probably know, if you've listened to a few of my recent episodes, I'm watching Jersey Shore for the first time, and I am now on season 4, where they're in Florence. And right now we have a break from Ron and Sam's horrible relationship, but that relationship is so abusive. It's so toxic and it's so abusive, and it's Ron who's the abuser. In 90% of the cases where there's an argument or some drama happens, it's because of Ron. However, 10% of it, based on my scientific findings, is Sam's fault as well, because she's an extremely insecure person. Also, mind you, this was filmed when she was like in her early 20s. So she's like 22, 23 when this is happening. But she is extremely insecure. She does have a victim mindset, and she instigates certain arguments so that she can probably spiral into the victim mindset. Again, not saying that any of the abuse or bad behavior on Ron's part is Sam's fault, but she is not completely faultless in this relationship. Although 90% of the blame falls on Ron, the worst person on the show. And Sam even takes time away from the show during season 3 to go home and heal for a few days. This was after a really bad fight with Ron, where Ron was 100% at fault. He completely vandalized her room and trashed all her belongings. And honestly, I feel like he should have been arrested after this, but alas. And listen, Sam tried to heal from that. And she came back and she said she was healed. She focused on herself. She spent time with her family, did a lot of introspection. But then what happened? The exact same thing as a few days before. So all that to say, we have to take accountability when accountability is due, but we need to be careful what we're internalizing. Because we are driven by these patriarchal superstitions and these false concepts of cause and effect, we're being intentionally misled to go to the wrong place, not only to feel whole, but also to heal and to get help. For example, if you've been raised in religion, you've probably been taught to go to your religious leader or your pastor, for example, for guidance and to rely on your faith. This is an intentional effort driven by an agenda to uphold the status quo, to ultimately prevent that blindfold from ever coming off. For example, the concept of biblical counseling originated in eugenics and also in an anti-psychiatry, anti-psychology movement to prevent people from seeking help in the mental health system. So in the 1920s and 30s, a eugenicist named Paul Popenow, if I'm mispronouncing that, I don't care, he opened several marriage counseling centers in California to advise white middle-class couples to stay together. In the 1960s, an anti-psychiatry movement started to take place in the United States to get people to go to their pastors and seek counseling from him rather than to go into the mental health system. And these two movements basically got together, had a baby, and pushed it out of its butthole and gave birth to marriage counseling. So the role of biblical marriage counseling is to keep couples together, prevent divorce, and ultimately keep them out of the mental health system. You see how that's driven by an agenda to uphold a certain status quo. And interestingly, I talk about this in my episode about how the love languages are a complete hoax. Check that out. I go into way more detail there, and it will literally blow your mind. It sounds like I'm making it up. I'm not. So, reeling it back into what I was saying earlier, what do we do instead of healing? And who is actually broken if it's not us? I'm going to answer that question like a pastor and reference a fictional book, Harry Potter. So in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, by the way, this is a spoiler for the one person out there who hasn't watched the movies or read the books. So in the series, Voldemort, obviously he's the main antagonist, and his goal is to defy death. He's like, I am not insufferable enough in this lifetime. I want to be immortal. In his quest to defy death, Voldemort makes Horcruxes. A Horcrux is an object that holds part of a person's soul. And the only way to make a Horcrux is by committing murder, because the act of murder literally rips your soul apart. Now, because Voldemort is a complete and utter lunatic, he makes 7 Horcruxes. And people who are broken in our universe, not in the Harry Potter universe, although this could count in the Harry Potter universe too, people who are broken are those who hurt others intentionally. Because everything is a projection. Most of the ways in which people behave and treat others is a projection of how they feel about themselves. So only a person who wants to hurt themselves and who feels hatred towards themselves can turn that outwards and hurt another person and feel hatred to another person. That's why misogynists, racists, anybody who operates based on hatred first needs to hate themselves. Self-hatred is a prerequisite to hatred of others. So if you are intentionally hurt by someone, you're not broken. You might be wounded, but you are not broken. They are. Now, this still leaves another big question unanswered. If healing isn't the answer, what is? Hey baddies, quick intermission here. As you probably know, this show is entirely independently produced by me. I am the producer, the director, the writer, the researcher, the fact checker, the marketing executive, and the unpaid intern who gets everyone coffee. Not to be confused with the unpaid intern of the patriarchy. And this is independently produced because I am committed to giving you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And it's because of support from baddies like you who subscribe to my Patreon that I can continue delivering the truth and not censoring myself and tiptoeing around topics that are way too important to ignore, but are kind of scary if you are signed to a label or a production company. And of course, I make it worth your while. I'm not just saying, please go subscribe to my Patreon, ma'am, please. You'll get tons of perks. I have a private phone line that you'll get the number to, and you can call me pretty much anytime. I'll answer if I'm free. And you also get other perks like early and ad-free releases of my episodes, bonus episodes, voting power on my girly laws, handwritten letters from me, and a bunch of other perks. Check it out for yourself. The link is in the show notes. And again, thank you all so much for your continued support and to my continued promise of giving you the whole truth independently without having to tiptoe around anything. Your support means the world to me. All right, back to the show. Stop trying to become someone who doesn't get hurt. That's impossible. Instead, focus on becoming someone who doesn't tolerate disrespect. Instead of just focusing on healing, you need to focus on raising your standards and lowering your tolerance for people and behaviors that don't align with what you think you deserve. To go back to that analogy I mentioned earlier, if I cut my finger dicing an onion, I can spend time healing my finger, but if I don't learn how to dice the onion properly, then I'm just going to go in, use the same janky technique, and cut my finger again. The healing part was important. I can't go back and dice the onion without first healing my finger. I don't want to reopen the wound or bleed on the onion, or I might not be able to move my fingers properly. So the healing part is important. Like I've said multiple times in this episode, I am not knocking healing. However, healing my finger is not going to prevent me from slicing it open again, dicing an onion. And the prerequisite to Raising your standards and lowering your tolerance for disrespect is unconditional self-love. This sounds easy, but developing unconditional self-love and truly falling in love with yourself is probably one of the hardest things you're ever going to do. Because there's so many layers of crap that we have to unlearn to get to the core of who we are and to develop unconditional love for that person. Because we have been taught from such a young age to hate ourselves, to fucking hate our guts, and it's so sad. And the low standards we all once had and the high tolerance for disrespect that's been groomed in us, those didn't just come out of nowhere. Those were socialized into us. Because from the time we are little girls, and especially when we're teenagers, we're groomed to tolerate disrespect. Those low standards are rooted in the self-hatred that we're taught. Because don't forget the type of world we live in. We live in a patriarchal world, and patriarchy cannot operate without the hatred of women. So not only have many men been conditioned to hate women, but pretty much all women have been conditioned to hate themselves. And our low standards and high tolerance for disrespect are physical manifestations of our lack of self-love. We accept what we think we deserve, and we're taught that we don't deserve that much. We're taught that we don't deserve the best. So we accept garbage. We accept disrespect. We accept abuse, manipulation. We think, oh, well, this narcissist I'm dating is the only person who's ever gonna love me, and so that's why I have to stay in this relationship. That's the mindset I had when I dated a guy who was completely toxic and emotionally abusive for 5 years. Because I genuinely thought that if it's not this person, it's no one. Because I'm so unlovable that I gotta hold on to this one person who wants me. So our self-hatred teaches us that we don't deserve good things. And then when we encounter abuse or bad behavior, instead of calling it out or leaving that situation altogether, we simply lower our threshold for what we'll tolerate. So stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what did I allow? Why did I allow this? There is nothing wrong with you unless you are intentionally hurting other people and going out of your way to cause harm to others. There's nothing wrong with you. And a wound doesn't mean you are broken. If I cut my finger dicing an onion, that doesn't mean I'm completely disabled and I'm as good as dead. That just means I have a wound. That's it. So to wrap this all up, yes, healing is important. There are things that we need to heal from, that we need to work through. And granted, during the healing process, we could also realize that we need to raise our standards and we need to raise our threshold for what we will tolerate. But let's be very explicit in calling this what it is. Unlearning the way we've been groomed to tolerate disrespect. So stop trying to become someone who doesn't get hurt. You're a human being, you are going to get hurt, and that's okay. Instead, start becoming someone who holds the people around her to a high standard and who does not tolerate anything that she doesn't believe she deserves. If I want something and I tolerate it, it's because I believe I deserve it. And I only believe I deserve good things. So if you look at me funny, if someone looks at me sideways or treats me with even a little bit of disrespect, RIP. RIP, you just dug yourself into a grave. RIP to the chicks that's dying to be me. So baddies, I'm going to end on that note. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you want to grab a copy of my book to learn about the 6 superstitions and how to unlearn them, along with learning the first 20 girly laws of power, then everything is going to be in the show notes. You can get a signed copy directly from me, or you can get digital or print copies from Amazon or on my website. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode. In the meantime, don't forget that you are the baddest bitch in any building that you step foot in. Until next time, stay bad. Love you. Bye. All right, it's time to run through all my shout-outs of the bad bitches supporting on Patreon. I changed accents. Shout out to Kate, Danny, Lindsay, Emberly, Brittany, Hannah, Shara, Amanda, Adriana, Mina, Gemma, Katia, May, Naomi, Nilufar, Adelaide, Nadia, Faith, Amy, Melinda, Sophia M, Sophia K, Jada, Amara, and Kat. Thank you, baddies, so much for your support.
The only thing that was wrong with you is that you didn't have standards. So get you some standards, and you will never have to heal again. I promise you.